Hello friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chesswise. Today we are at the next topic, that is initiative from the opening, and we are at the third example of the Scandinavian defense. We are discussing why we should choose, what are the benefits of choosing the Portuguese variation. Again, as I said, I am going through my games so that it will make us understand the basic intricacies. So let's get to the starting of the Portuguese variation. E4, D5, E takes D5, one of the main moves. Nf6, d4 and bishop g4. So the first benefit, as I said, is that most players don't like the move f3 over here, nor they like b5. So they go with the move nf3, which is what happened in this game. We'll discuss the move b2 in our upcoming lessons. Now black goes qd5, and we can say black is on a easy road towards equality. But the lines become sharp also, because that is how I want to play as black. White goes b2. Black goes nc6, putting pressure on d4, and here white has several ways to choose. Most logical is castle. There is the move nc3. Knight c3 is often met by queen f5, and d5 is met by long castle when the d pawn is lost. Queen often goes to f5. See here bd3 is met by bf3. When queen f3, gf, d4 is lost, and after bishop d3, bishop f3, you can see that after gf, queen can nicely be placed on h3 or h5. This position is also somewhat better for black already. If castle is unnecessarily delayed, then black can get the move e5 very often. So castle, long castle, not disclosing whether I want to play e6 or e5. See, this is my initial games of the Scandinavian defense. My opponent is 2315 rated and he is an IM. I think he had also not faced much about this opening, so he told me after the game that he wanted to have a slightly better and a safe position. See, this is what the logic is. Now here we see that nc3 is again met by queen f5. So he played c4 because he wants to use the queenside pawn advance to attack near my king, and then he will get his bishop e3, knight c3 and so on. So queen goes to f5. This square is the standard place. First, let us look at some interesting ideas. If white insists on the move d5, then black will not go e5, but he will do e6 and win the d5 pawn by force, which is attacked 4 times now. After knight c3, there will be d, cd and d5, and just the d5 pawn will be lost. If white insists on playing h3, bh5, here you can see that g4 is very bad. Instantly, black will get winning position after knight g4, hg4, qg4 check. If king h1, then see queen h3 check, kg1. You can see that the move bishop f3, bf3, rook d4, followed by rook h4, or the move knight d4, both are very strong. If the king moves to h2, then we can just take on d4 for free. Knight takes d4. The point is that after knight takes d4, the queen will first move with a check, and then we will get the knight on d4, rook takes d4. That is also close to a winning position. So now d4 is under fire because bf3 and d4 is a threat. So white plays bishop e3. Here I considered the move e5 for quite some time. I spent around 7-8 minutes. Then finally thought that it's not very clear. See what I saw. e5, d5, e4, knight d2, knight e5, but all this is very much playable because see, after knight c3 we can do bd6, and soon we can try to get our attack on the king side. Many a times there are threats related to be2, queen e2, and then going nf3 check, unleashing this bishop. So the lines can become highly favorable for black if white misses one small step also. This you can analyze on your own. I don't play this. I prefer the move a6, but those who don't like e6, they can use this line. The opening preparation is more about getting standard positions and at the same time the ones which we like, which are according to our style. So I went e6 here, keeping some more options open. Let's see what. nc3, and now see exact this position I was facing for the first time, and I spent relatively good time and went with the move bishop c5. I very much felt that my development is slightly more, and why not exploit the weakness of d4. Development is equal, but see the queen on f5, I am counting it like slightly extra, more active than the d1. Here my opponent played very nicely, and he put some real difficult questions. I was expecting either the move queen a4 or the one which he played. After queen a4 I had thought that this c6 knight can be moved, means we can take on d4. We need to keep this bishop, very important thing. So we can go with bishop f3, bf3, so that everything is not traded on d4. And now knight d4. The point is, see, we don't want to end up with a rook on d4 because knight b5 will be a big problem. So here bd4, and this seems like a very good position because see, qb3 can be met by c6 or b6 and nb5 can be just met by a6 safely over here. So knight d4, rook d4, that is very much active. Now my opponent played the move qb3, which made me a bit worried because now first thing I understood that he has caught the logic very well. What is it? That bf3, and now I can neither do knight d4 because qb7 is lost, nor can I do bd4 because bishop c6 will open my castled position. So I didn't want that position, of course. I was already considering the sacrifice of exchange on d4 because I wanted the c6 knight to come on the d4 square at the end. So that is why I went with the move see, bishop takes d4, knight takes d4 so that the bishops can be traded, and now see, rook d4. This was my main idea and I was heavily counting on the line bishop takes d4, knight d4 attacking e2 and b3 both, so forced q d1. bg4 will be similar to knight g4 like in the game, and now see rook d8. And I felt that this is really great position. First threat is knight e2 check, and knight cannot move to d5, again e2 is free. So white might do bg4 and g4. This would be like the game position which I missed actually, and this position is winning for black almost. We'll come to it soon. The point is that knight is about to move to c2 now, and there is the threat of queen f4 as well. So say rook c1, queen f4 threatening mate, and g3 can be met by nf3 and rook takes d1. So here my opponent goes with the move bishop g4 first. I didn't want to play rook g4, it is very much playable. Rook g4, f3, rook h4 is of course playable, but I wanted the position which we just discussed. So now see bd4, otherwise he is just a pawn down, and now see knight d4, q d1, and this was the position which came on the board, and I simply missed the move rook d8. But what I miss is not the move rook d8. See, generally what happens, players don't miss the first moves many a times, they miss the next move. So here see what is happening. After rook d8 I saw the move knight d5 and felt that this is very good for white because see, e takes d5, then queen d4, queen attacks a7 suddenly and the queen is well placed, rook will come out. But what I missed here, see, is that queen e5 then g4 is lost, queen f4 is not possible. So I thought, what will happen now? Here the move ne7 check is also threatened, but see, here comes the move nc6. When I saw it on the computer, in a flash it showed the move nc6. So that is what happens when we analyze with a computer and we feel, oh, such an easy move, how did I miss? But see, it finds the move precisely. Now the first point is, see, ne7 blunder, just knight takes c7, knight e3 just loses to knight e3 because the d1 queen hangs, and see, there is nothing much to do. Maybe he can try h3. Even then I feel there are many ways. Just move the knight to e5 and attack c4. That is, I think, best. Anyways, by the time this position came, I had another idea in mind and I went for that. So I played qf4. I was considering this position to be at least somewhat better for black. But as the computer says, after the move g3, nf3 check, kg2, all this I had calculated. nh4 check, I was thinking I am much better. Point is that if king h1 now, there is queen h6, and after h4 there is the move knight h2. And here after the move nh4, computer says it is equal after kg1. My opponent didn't like that, perhaps, or he thought that he should be winning over here. Maybe my tactics is bluff. Do note that king h1 can be met by the move queen f2 also and the move nf2 also. Both are very strong. See, nf2, rook f2, queen f2, gh, then queen takes b2. There are enough pawns for the piece. My opponent took g takes h4 and I had now seen the move rook d8. This happens to be a clearly winning position, but it took me really some time to understand the point that after qc2 there is rook d2, and there are now two things which I had to see carefully. One is qd2. This I evaluated precisely. I thought black is almost winning, or at least he is clearly better, because see, rook d1 is met by an e3 check. Rook is lost, and whatever is done, see now b2 will be lost and the position is bad. Knight is hanging, so there is problem, and an e3 check is taking the rook. So this position I knew I am clearly better. Also I checked the line that after queen e4 also there is a deadly tactic. Rook takes f2, there is queen h2 check, king f3, and now the move, see, queen f2 check. These all analysis made me already somewhat happy. kg4 and f5 check. I felt that I am seeing reasonably well. But by now, back of the mind, I was bit worried about qd8, which I was considering like only somewhat slightly better to clearly better only. But soon I realized that after qd8, this is what opponent played. It's the only playable option. kd8, rook d1 check, kc8. And here, as I was calculating, I realized that this is not just clearly better. Perhaps it's almost winning. The main factor which decides the position in my favor is the poorly placed king on g2, which gets extracted out also. So my opponent went here h3. As we see, all the white pawns are weak. So come see, queen h2 check, kf3, queen takes h3 check, ke2, knight e5. Now it was very clear that the position is heading towards the win. Queen f3 check is threatened and c4 is attacked. So f3, and now I went knight c4. Now see, again new threats. One is queen h2 and other is knight b2. Opponent went b3, queen h2 check. Now big problems. kd3 is met by nb2 and rook is lost. ke1 is met by ne3. Only move rook f2, and now queen e5 check. We can see the power of this queen because of the poorly placed white king on e2. Knight is hanging, and now I realized that it should be easy win now. Opponent played ne4, forced since kd3 loses to queen e3 and kf1 to knight e3 check. And now I went f5. So I realized that I should happily go for queen versus two rooks because I have plenty of pawns over here. So b takes c, f takes e4. Of course fe blunder because queen e4 check, king has to go to f5, threatening rook f8 mate. But first I will do qc4 check and just move the b pawn and safeguard my king. Opponent played direct kf1. I could have played ef, but I went b6, first safeguarding my king. Rook e1, e3. Now see the white rooks get discoordinated after re2, qd4. Actually see there are many moves here. Rook takes e3, qc4 check, rook e2 protecting a2, and now queen h4. Rook takes e6, and now I realized that there shouldn't be much of a trouble because see the rooks will be now forced to defend against this h passed pawn, and then soon I can use the c passed pawn as well if required. Queen h1 check, kf2, queen h2 check, kf1, qg3, improvised the queen position. Opponent went rook 6 e3, protecting both a2 and f3. Now I went g5, a3, h5, rook g2, queen f4. I think this much is enough because now we can see both rooks are stuck. g5 cannot be attacked easily. Whenever I want, I can do queen c1 check and take a3 if the a3 rook moves, and I am also getting the move h4. Rook e4 allows queen f3 check as well. So I soon won the game. So the purpose of showing these games is to make you understand how the Portuguese variation is perfectly playable, and there are some psychological advantages, especially when we are playing against around 2000 plus players. See, they don't want unnecessary sharp and crazy tactics which arise after bb5 check or that f3 bf5 c4 line, which makes white's king very unsafe. I hope you are finding these lessons useful and instructive. Do let me know in the comments below. Thanks for your time.